Hello and welcome to First Basso, a show where we get together to help each other get better. And today's episode is completely unscripted, not that any of the other ones were, but this one is a little different. I don't feel like doing my regular intro. I don't feel like being as cheerful about even doing this recording, but I felt it was necessary to do it. The time in which we're recording this, what is today's date? It's June. It's June 3rd, 2020, and a lot has happened in America, and for lack of better terms, I'm pissed. So I just wanted to get people that I trust to also talk about how they're thinking about it. And we're all different races, different backgrounds, different viewpoints, and we're just trying to figure this out. So thank you guys for being willing to do this literally last minute. I texted you guys today and was like, we need to talk about this. So I guess I'll start. I've been on a social media fast personally for going into my third week, finishing out my third week, mainly from, there's just a lot going on social media right now in general. Like COVID conversations were getting too ugly for me, in how different people were addressing whether or not it's actually happening, whether or not the deaths count, whether or not they're affected, therefore they shouldn't have to be quarantined and it's not their problem, or it's completely my problem and I'm mad at those who don't see that as my problem, and you're mad at people who don't see why it shouldn't be a problem, and the name calling and it was just too much. So I just got off and was like, I just need time away. I need to just talk to the Lord. I can't do this. And then to see, we had Ahmad. I saw his video. First people that I thought of after watching that one was obviously my little brother Kellon and my older brother Kevin. And I even instinctively, without questioning it, I had FaceTimed with Kellon and Mom, and they were in a grocery store, and I saw that Kellon was walking around with his hoodie up, which he does all the time. Like, he loves wearing hoodies, he loves wearing them up, and I completely freaked out. And I was like, Kellon, you have to know who you are in America. You take off you're wearing a mask and a hoodie. Take your hoodie off. Like, please, for the love of God, do not put on your hoodie up like that anymore. You can't do that anymore. If you're going on a walk, smile. If you're going on a jog, smile. But please do not wear your hoodie while you also have to wear a mask. And so now, like, he's paranoid even going on a walk. And I think of Kevin, my older brother, and, he's a famous singer. He's on everything. People know him for his music. And yet, who cares if he looks like another black man in America with a beard who's really tall, and he drives a nice car. He has a white wife, and that in and of himself could get him profiled and pulled over, and something happened to him and I never hear from him again. And so he's upset. He's having to have conversations at home about when we have kids, like, how are we going to talk about this? How are we going to address this? How are we going to protect our kids? What are we going to do? And then with Breonna Taylor, who's she was shot an hour from where I live. And one of my friends, it's like her older sister's best friend. Like, it's super close to home for me. That one I can't even process that one. That one I've been trying to like rack my head through how in the world that could even be possible without it being deliberate. I just cannot process that murder. But then George Floyd, like, I don't know if you guys all watched the whole video through. I watched the entire video through. And what's almost funny but not is that none of this is new. Like, this stuff has been happening, and people have been recording. I think this was probably the slowest death we all had to watch. Most of it's very quick and to the point. This one was drawn out. And I think the difference is that we're actually having to sit down in quarantine, and we have to think about it. There's nowhere to go. We're not running to work every day to like put up a quick hashtag Black Lives Matter and then move on because life is happening. Life isn't really happening. So the only real difference is that we're all having to pause in the midst of such heinous crime. So it feels worse when in fact it's been this bad the whole time. Now, I've been getting amazing text messages from my white friends all over, all week, for the last like 2 weeks. I've been getting, even today, like Facebook Messenger and regular text, and just people really not just reaching out to just say like I love you and whatever, but to also be like, so what do I do? What am I allowed to do? Is it okay for me to do XYZ? Is it not okay? If I post this, is this okay? If I don't post, is that okay? And even that is bothering me, because it's like everyone, doesn't even matter what race we are anymore. Everyone is in a catch-22 situation. Everyone. It's like, if you are white, or if you're just not black, and you post about it, depending on how you post about how you're feeling or what's going on, you can be looked at as trying to cover up the voices of black people and not pushing their voice to the front, and trying to do like a white savior thing where it's like, well, like, I saw this, I hated this, this is what I have done, when in fact that's not the tone at all in which people are posting those things, but that's how a lot of people are seeing them. Then there's the I don't know what to say, so I'd rather not say anything, and in that you're considered an accomplice. You're considered to be against black people, which makes no sense to me, because not everyone has any, like, can speak. Like, they don't know what's best. They don't know how to address it without getting attacked, so they just don't, and they do stuff behind the scenes. But if you didn't post about it, you clearly don't care. And then there's people who are really just doing this for the trend. You know, yesterday was like blackout something. I'm not on social media, I just heard about it, but like, you know, everyone is posting a black picture to symbolize what's going on and what happened to George, and some people literally are doing it because that's what you're supposed to be doing right now. You're supposed to be doing this trend. You're supposed to put up the hashtag so you can be part of the in crowd and not Like that, you feel like you've done your due diligence when you've really just done nothing but perpetuate the problem because you didn't let it sit and seep into your frontal lobe what's actually happening. Some people have no clue what's happening. They just saw that there was a hashtag and they jumped on it. Or they just saw that there was a bunch of black screens and they posted one without a caption of anything. It's just, oh, there's been black screens. I should probably post a black screen too. And and being a Christian myself, I have like an entirely different perspective of, or not perspective, but a different category of anger towards Christians in general right now, like all of them as a group. I'm not saying that all Christians, but I'm saying like as the collective body. I'm embarrassed today to be considered a Christian in America, because the number of Christians in America who are still not getting it, like to the point where they're saying like, well, black people should just get over it. God will fix it if you guys will stop focusing on the past, like you're not slaves anymore. And getting hearty amens from their fellow congregates or even from their pastor, who's like, yeah, absolutely, 100%, that's accurate. You just get over it. Slavery's been over. People who say that the church shouldn't be involved in social justice issues, when Brian knows this of me, I can't process how you can read the Bible and not hear one long story of social justice. Like the whole Bible's founded on social justice. There's no other way to see the scripture. I can't process how people miss this and want to sing next to me in church while also not wanting to protect me. The same people that greet you at church and hug you are the exact same people who are saying some of the most vile things online and think it's totally fine. As a first generation Black American, I think it's more difficult in the context of people, is the word negate, who I am as a Black female in America, and because I'm not black, as I'm told, like you're not black. I don't know what that means still, but to not be black because I come from immigrant parents, then what I think and feel and experience isn't quite the same. So I, shouldn't be as upset, because it's like, it's not really your story. Like, yeah, you look like it could be your story, but it's not really your story. But like, no one asks me where my parents were born when they pull me over. That's not the first question they ask me, so they can make sure they treat me like a first generation American Black kid versus a African American or a Black kid and who's generationally here. That's not the question. I get followed in stores just as much as anyone else does. Kevin had posted a video. BuzzFeed even picked it up. And he addressed how our parents are Nigerian and Grenadian. They came here wanting to do better. My dad came here as a physician, and he wasn't allowed to practice, so he just found whatever job he could until he was allowed to practice. And most people, especially today, would be like, well, no, I came to America. I'm not doing that. Or, it's like, well, we don't want foreigners stealing our jobs. Like, there's so much commentary on what a foreigner is allowed to do, a black foreigner is allowed to do. And he humbled himself in his position and said, I should be making so much money right now, and instead I'm working a minimum wage job until I can figure out how to make it work in America to do my craft. Because at the end of the day, my wife still has to eat. So I'm just going to do that. And Kevin said that, Mom used to tell us, and she still tells us, go be extraordinary and uncommon. Anyone who's heard Kevin talk about this, he tells everyone that we were told to be extraordinary and uncommon. The reason why we were told to be extraordinary and uncommon is because we have to be extraordinary and uncommon to be seen as ordinary and common. It's the only option. Any lower, and we're just other black kids. So they put us in the best schools they could find. My dad worked as a physician, 2 and 3 jobs, falling asleep at the wheel, ending up in car accidents, fought hard, working under people who still saw him as another black man, gave him more work than he should have ever had compared to his white counterparts, going places and being treated as if he had a disease, wouldn't even shake this man's hand until they noticed his signature for anything he was signing that had MD on it, and all of a sudden they want to open doors for him. They want to do these things. And it's like everything that they've done for us, and Kellen, you can back me up on this, but like everything that they've done for us from the time before we were born to now, literally could be erased because of a scientific biology that we don't have control over. It's senseless. It doesn't make any sense no matter which way you spin it. And I'm pissed. Like, I'm so angry, and I've been trying so hard to just, like, it's okay, it's fine, like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, but today I hit angry. Because I don't understand how it's this incredibly hard to love people and see them for who they are, where they come from, and just appreciate that, especially if you are someone who claims the God of the Holy Bible. Like, if you don't know how to do that yet, you need to reassess your walk with the Lord. You need to check to see if you even have shoes on. I don't know if you've left your house with the Lord. Like, where are you going? That you have every, like, the thought in your brain that you can look at your neighbor and say, get over your past so that way you can just live life normally. You're being dramatic. I can't, like, choosing to not see it and choosing to not sit in it with your brother. I'm sorry, you've missed the entire message of Scripture. Try again. Like, completely start over. You missed something somewhere, and you need to reevaluate your entire thought process on who Jesus Christ of Nazareth actually was. And for those who are not Christian, I don't think there's an excuse even there. Like, the idea that you can look at someone and say, get over it, it's not a big deal, or because I don't know what to say about it, or because I want to say a lot of, or, you know, gosh, I'm not even making sense. Like, people who are choosing not to see it because they prefer to live in their happy world. It's like, well, nothing's wrong in my world, and I don't like sad things, so I'm just going to tune it out. I'm like, I'm so glad that you have the option to tune it out. I don't have that option. I'm constantly thinking of my brothers. Constantly. I can't, especially now that we have to wear masks. They're in California, where if you don't wear a mask, like, jail time, you know? So they're forced to wear a mask. And if you attempt to wear anything that looks suggestive while also wearing something you're required to have on for the safety of everyone around you, you might not go home that day. I can't process this. I'm just mad. I'm just mad. I love too much. I praise God for the mother that I have, that she taught us how to walk into uncomfortable situations. I mean, our first like my first memorable church experience, walking into an all-white church at the age of 5 years old, first time in Kentucky, and being told by the greeter, do you realize that there's a black church on the other side of town? It's like 1994. It's not like it was, I mean, it's not that long ago. It was 94. And being asked, not even hello, no good morning, no welcome to our church, no is this your first time? No, it's did you know that there is a black church on the other side of town? And my mom, being the example that she is, responded with, yes, ma'am, we do. We've gone, and now we're here to worship. Thank you. And took us by the hand, walked past us, and we got to sit and witness the discomfort of that entire congregation, other than the pastor and the first elder, and having a black family in their pews. The kids in our little Sabbath school classes, our cradle classes, would not talk to me and Kevin for a couple of months until they realized, oh, wait, you guys are kind of like normal. Oh, okay. Like, you're not crazy weird. And mom just taught us to constantly go into spaces that make people feel uncomfortable until the love that we pour into them is contagious, to where they can't do anything but either stay uncomfortable themselves or receive the fact that we love them regardless, and we would ask that they do the same back. And that's why, like, Jonathan, I don't know if I'm sure you remember this, but when we had it was like our Friendsgiving at undergrad, and it was like, you know, we have a very colorful group of friends, and I love that so much about our mixed group and how we just appreciate where everyone's from. We joke, we laugh, we connect, and our center is God, and that's the best part. But when we took our group picture, I stepped out and I said, no, like, I'm not getting in a group picture that looks segregated. And we didn't, it wasn't intentional. It's not like we got over here and was like, okay, all the black kids stand over here and all the white kids stand in the middle and like brown people stand on the side. Like, it just so happened to look like that. And I was like, absolutely not. I stepped out and was like, you need to move here, you need to move there, you need to move there, because I'm not going to be in a photo that looks like segregated people trying to be friendly. Like I don't want to do that. I want it to look like how we actually are, and it be mixed. It be intermingled to show how we actually are as a group. And that's just what I was taught. I also know that's not everyone's story. I know a lot of people on multiple sides of every spectrum that they grew up in communities that were of people that looked and spoke and believed like them, and that's it. They don't leave where they live. I mean, Kellan, we grew up in a town where people, if they left Owensboro for 10 minutes, they were already having panic attacks and they want to come back to Owensboro. They wouldn't go that far, you know? And so they always think this is home base, this is our home neighborhood, this is like every generation has lived here, we feel safest here, we don't go to the other side of town because that's where the black people are, we don't go to that side of town because that's where the white people are, but this is where we've planted ourselves, this is what we do. And it's just kind of like, you know, you stay in your space, I stay in mine, might wave, maybe, but that's it. Like, we're not going to do that. We're the weird people coming in. We don't have ties. We don't have our families are all overseas. We don't have family reunions. We don't have these things. And we're planting ourselves in these situations where they're like, I don't think you're supposed to be doing that. And it's 2020 and that's still happening. They're like, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be there. Why are you over there? Why are you comfortable doing this? Why? And it's like, I don't understand how you're comfortable not, though. Isn't that what we're all supposed to be doing? We're also supposed to be living our lives together and loving each other through that. There was something I was talking about this morning where I couldn't rationalize how we are by nature attracted to art and creativity. We are, you know, we love music, we love artwork, we love poetry. Can you get me my charger real quick? Thanks. We love poetry, we love anything creative, and how we can just look at each other and not appreciate the art that we walk around amongst within every day. Like, how do you just like look at someone and say like your artwork is it's not necessary. It's the value of this artwork is inferior to the value of mine. How God designed me is somehow like his best work. You're just a test run, like what are you considered? Like that the most creative genius of all time could showcase who he is in every single person on this planet, and we have the audacity to let the creator know and how we treat each other. Like, well, I think what you did to me was awesome, but like all of that, like, could have done better. In fact, you could have done without. Like, we didn't even need that. It's just too much. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even want to talk anymore. Does anyone else want to say anything?
I feel like I've had to spend quite a bit of time trying to sort of process what's happening, because, you know, like, I'm sort of having to think a little bit about like what my experience is going to be like in school, just because of the fact that I'm like, my schooling sort of requires me to Like I'm it like I don't really know what will happen when I have to start my rotations again, as a medical student, because yes, there's this whole quarantine issue that's sort of keeping people indoors. So there's a lot of rotations that just aren't happening now. But the other side of this is, well, you can't really keep medical students off. You can't keep them out of the hospital forever because they've got to get hospital experience, or they're probably not going to be the best, or at least the most practical doctors. You know, they might know their stuff, but like they need to see real patients and actually apply it in real time and all that. So, I don't expect for medical students to be off the wards forever. And I've actually already heard from a resident in another state that they are starting to let medical students back on the ward. So now that we have this sort of climate of increased racial tension, not that we didn't already have it, it's just now we have a moment of exacerbated tension. And given that the hospitals are almost always in the middle of some big city, well, now I actually have to really think about taking care of myself as a Black male, because in order to get ready for the day, I have to leave the house, leave the apartment at a really, really early time in the morning. Oftentimes we don't actually get to see the sun that day, because we'll go in before the sun comes up and we'll come out after the sun comes down. And, people generally would probably not think very well of, they don't necessarily think, oh, that's safe, when they see a Black person in the middle of the night, especially if they're male. So, so that's something I've had to think about, just for my own safety. And then just kind of, sometimes I don't really know what to do with. So I honestly don't know what to do with the protests sometimes, because I recognize the need, but sometimes I don't know if it's a futility mindset, but sometimes I just feel maybe is there a better way to do this, because it's I don't want this to happen either, because I'm definitely set up to be a potential target. But I don't want, I don't want our people to undergo further discrimination. But yet it's the more we try, the easier it almost becomes easier to brand us with a bad name, and easier to say, hey, look, we have a reason to be racist. This is totally justified. And I just don't want to do something that's going to also backfire to some degree, and I have nothing against protesting. I think it's important. I just don't know if it's the best thing to do right now, just because of all the tension and because of all the really generally confusing news articles about everything. Because you see the news article, it says, oh, there was riot here and there was riot there, and this store was destroyed and this store was destroyed, but you never really it's hard to really get a clear picture of what's really happening. I guess just trying to really understand what are people actually. I guess really the question is, my question has just been throughout this whole time, it's just what is actually going through people's minds right now. Where are people's hearts? For some of them, where did they put their hearts? Because some of them are just not in great places. Some of them are in really dark, dangerous places. And sometimes I wonder why, I wish more people could I wish more people could be like Jesus. I guess that's the simplest way to put it. But like, I wish, I have, when I like read some of the things that Jesus did in the four Gospels, I'm always like really very, very astounded at his ability to read people. He knew how to read a heart. He just knew. He always like he just knew. He just always knew. And like he's the kind of guy that if you looked into his eyes, you would feel like someone was peering deep into the depths of your soul because he actually did kind of know. And yet we know that he was, for him to complete his mission, he was required not to use his divinity. So that means he was doing all that heart reading as a human, like using human capacities with the help of the Spirit, but these are all human capacities. And it kind of it kind of hurts me that people don't, Christians especially, don't really see many may not even recognize the need, but many of them don't. They just don't really see the need to look at the heart, to man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. That doesn't mean that man can't look at the heart, because I think Christ did a very good example of showing that we actually can. It just requires us to learn about people, and it requires us to look at what people are doing. What are they choosing to do? And asking what's going on in their heads.
And why.
And so that's why for me it's always such an important thing to constantly be asking, what is actually going on in this person's head? And so that's also why it's, I like what that police officer did was definitely murder. And yet at the same time, I'm also like, I don't want to be too quick to judge because I don't actually know what was going on in his head. I don't know his background. I don't know how he was raised. I don't know what other terrible things he's done. I don't know if this is a first occurrence or a repeat occurrence. I don't know if he's secretly part of like Ku Klux Klan or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about this guy. Mm-hmm. And so like, I feel like I'm not in a position to judge. I don't think, like, I feel like there's enough evidence on the outside to tell us that clearly there's something's clearly not right in his mind. Like something, like morally, there's something clearly wrong, and that justice is needed. But yet I guess I'm always wondering, like,
how did we get here?
Where's the avenue for change, basically? That's really what I'm looking for.
Right.
Like, where's the avenue? Because I feel like you have to look at the heart to find those avenues, if they even exist. Because we don't always know. We don't know. Because some of the worst people, Paul was practically Hitler, and all of a sudden he's practically, Jesus' best friend. We don't know. We just I feel like sometimes we just don't know. But I guess sometimes I just wonder, like, on the other side, I just wonder why color matters so much. Like, how superficial can you get with your vision? Like, there are some chemicals in my skin called melanin, and for some reason that like makes you like uncomfortable. That's really that actually makes me laugh a little bit. That's a little bit ridiculous. Like, like I just feel like there's just more important things than a chemical in my skin that happens to make me look a little darker. I don't. So I feel like there just needs to be more looking at the heart on like every person's side, you know? Like I feel like there needs to be a lot more of people who don't understand what blacks are going through to try and understand their story and try to understand their actions, try to understand, so why do they respond to this action in this way? And it like what, you know, people react well and badly to all kinds of different things, just trying to understand what's actually going on in people's heads, because I feel like that's really the only way to garner trust. It's just understanding. It's a lot of understanding, you know. I feel like that's really what's been on my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else wants to talk.
Yeah. Josh, you are half black. So like how are you processing this being half black and maybe to some not necessarily being considered black, and to others maybe you do, like
Right.
Yeah.
Well, growing up, it was always very different, I guess. I never considered myself like to be different, but my grandma, I love her so much, but she was always the one to burst any kind of bubble I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will never forget the first day I realized that I was different, you know, that I wasn't fully white or black. I'm going to stop for this one. I was outside in the country, somewhere close to Lexington, and me and my sister were playing outside, and my grandma quickly came out and got us. She said, "You can't play outside in the country because someone will come and shoot you because you look different." And I was like, oh, okay. And that's when I kind of realized that she's kind of stuck in her old ways, which have changed now, thankfully. But I never really considered to be black or white, I guess, growing up. I just considered to be me. And as I went to school and as I encountered more different people, I realized that, you know, I'm kind of both. And I feel like I'm in a good position in a way, and yet a bad position, because people come up to me and say, "Oh, well, you need to support your black heritage," or, "Oh, well, you're not fully black, so what can you do? You know, you're not like discriminated like all of us." And it's kind of rough because, I mean, I fully support both sides of myself because I have to, you know, it's who I am. But at the same time, I feel bad because I don't get looked upon all the time as someone different, you know? Like, I don't look fully black. I don't look fully white. Half the time people think I'm some kind of Latino mix. And to be honest, I find that kind of funny. But, you know, this whole situation we're in, I mean, it's been coming for a long time, and it's honestly really sad that it's had to get to a point where a man has died slowly for some people to wake up and say things need to change. But what happens when things don't change? Do people just start going back to living the way they did before? You know, or do they actually want to stand up and fight? And I think we're going to get to that moment probably within a few weeks where either it's going to die down, which I really hope it doesn't, or things are going to get a lot worse. And I pray that if things are going to get a lot worse, that it's God's doing. Mm-hmm. That this is something that's supposed to happen.
Yeah. The fact that you just said that, actually, a friend of mine from Utah, he texted me yesterday and was like, "Candace, is this it? Like, is this God telling us he's ready to blow the trumpet? Because we couldn't possibly get worse than this. Like, there's no way. Like, this has to be it. And I was like, bro, I'm ready to go find a trumpet to blow myself so we can just call this raps. Like, I don't want to see worse. I'm already livid with what I'm seeing now. I don't know if I'll be able to stomach worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know. You guys, like, even you, like, I don't know. Jonathan, bro, I love you so much. Like, you were literally the first person to text me and reach out and, like, not only check up on me, but we're so comfortable in our siblinghood. Like, you are my brother, okay? Like, I would fight for you. I'm little, but I will fight for you, okay? And we don't look anything like each other. And in fact, people look at us funny when we introduce ourselves to people as, this is my brother, this is my sister, and they're like, okay. Like, they just they don't understand. And we're like, no, you don't understand. We are siblings. Like, we have gone through stuff together. We have walked through hardship together. Like, you were literally the very first person to text me, to check up on me. You have continued to check up on me. You've continued to ask questions. I wish more people could see people like you doing things like that, because that's the stuff that's not going on social media. It's not like you're texting me and then going on Facebook and being like, guys, I texted my black friend today. Like, check up on your black friends. Like, no. Like, that would be dumb. And I would not be okay with that. I don't think anyone would be okay with that. But there's so much going on behind the scenes that people are missing. And so what prompted you to reach out to me when you did? And how you did?
What prompted me to?
Yeah.
I mean, I love you, and I've loved you for a long time, and a difficult part of sitting and listening to this is that, like, you and Kellen and Josh have both described, like, you can't turn it off. This is an everyday thing for you. And a really difficult part of this for me is it's super, super easy to turn it off. It's a very possible thing for me to turn it off and disengage and not know that this is happening, because I've never once been nervous about jogging through my city at night. I've never been nervous about jogging. I now live in the country. I've never been nervous about jogging there at night. I've never had to be worried about sexual harassment or racial profiling. It's something that is not in my life unless I actively look for it. And I've been lucky to know and love people such as yourself, to grow up in DC, which was not, it was an incredibly racially diverse place. It's a crazy diverse city. And so it's the only thing that prompted me to reach out to you was just, it hurts to see people that you love hurting for reasons that are outside of your control. And it's difficult because it doesn't feel like there's a lot that I can do to help. But from what we've talked about throughout our history, because like you said, again, unfortunately, this isn't anything new that we're seeing in the news. It's just being videotaped on a more and more frequent basis. When it does pop back into my vision, the only thing that I can do is reach out and ask what I can do and how I can support. And there's not a lot of ways, me being white and me also being a man, there are things that I can do and there are things that I can say, but I'm not the voice that should be heard the loudest currently in this conversation or a lot of conversations. So yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know what to say. That's why, and that's why I encourage the other people in my life, this isn't a daily struggle for, to do the same, because it's hard to be presented with a problem that there isn't a fix to. And this isn't that. I'm just saying, like, it's human nature to, when you're presented with something, be like, okay, I'm going to dive in. How can I fix this? And I wish that there was a silver bullet that I could do to make this go away, and there's nothing that I can do other than the little that I can do.
And the little that you do, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. And I want you to know that it speaks volumes. I want you to know that, like, that meant so much to me. To know that someone was checking up on me just to make sure I was okay. Knowing that they're in a very awkward position right now in America. Just trying to understand, yet trying to speak up, yet trying to help, and no matter which angle you go, like, you're considered wrong. And I hate that. That shouldn't even be allowed. Where we pick apart how people say things, why they say things, how they post things, when the timing in which, and the cancel culture, and it's I hate it. But you reached out to me, and the second you did, I was like, of course my brother would reach out to me. Of course he'd be the first to check up on me. Of course he'd be the one to see if I'm okay. Because that's who you've always been. And not enough people realize that there have been good, true, white people in this fight for a long time, even if it doesn't look like the fight you want it to look like. Jesus didn't come here the savior that everyone thought he was, but he did his job and he did it well. And so it's just, I want people to see the angles. Like, just try. Like, I appreciate that, Jonathan. I did.
Thank you. There's some very, I think, important things that I have written down in my apartment that I'm trying to remind myself of every day. Because we all do come to this, all five of us come with very, very different perspectives to this conversation, in the ways that we were raised, and the color of our skin, and the way that the world perceives us because of that. I know in a lot of situations, as a Christian, as a man, as a white person, as a sports fan, as everything that I am, there's never anything that I can say on any topic that everyone 100% across the board will agree with or enjoy. And so, like you spoke about earlier with posting for Blackout Tuesday yesterday, for posting with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, for speaking up and sharing things. I know by not doing that, I'll make people angry. By doing that, I'll make some others angry. Something that I've tried to remind myself and everybody that I've spoken to about this is that there's no perfect way to go about this. And I know that I've made some people angry in the last week and a half on how I've handled some things and some conversation points that I've brought up. But if you reach out to the people that you love that are being affected by this, and you take their guidance into account, then that's the only thing that you can do. And if there are people that are angry about it, that aren't willing to come forth and tell you that they're angry and tell you why and start a conversation about it, then what can you do? That, I think that I wish people could be a little more like Jesus should just be the title of this episode. And I think America has a very difficult road in front of us. If I can even speak to that, because again, it's not going to be as personally difficult for me as for others, because of just the geographics of our country. If you look at the way that it's laid out, I think there's a lot of beautiful things and progressive things that are happening in cities across the country, because when you live in a city, you're surrounded by such a wealth of different perspectives and different people and different cultures and different everything. Like being raised in DC, there was always people of different perspectives to talk to and to hang out with, and that were doing things that I didn't understand, or making food that smelled weird or incredible, or there was always different things that were outside of my perspective of my house, and being in a family that had to communicate about those things was so helpful for me. But when you start moving towards the part of the countries that get more and more and more rural, it's human nature to congregate and be attracted to socially people that look and sound and talk and do the things that you do, which is, I mean, it's an example of that is like, there's a reason why I light up when another redhead walks into the room. I'm like, hey, like, that we have to be dipped in sunscreen to go out into the sun, and like, you understand that part of me that few other people do. And so I think it's human nature to be gravitated towards that. And as you start getting more and more rural in the US, just geographically, because of how much space there is around you and how fewer people there are, you're able to find a group of people that don't make you uncomfortable, and you're able to isolate yourselves in communities where you don't have to be confronted with anything that's outside of your own realm. And so when you inject social media into that, and the ways that ideas and conversations and aspects of life are able to now be in your bubble through technology, through your phone and computer, where societally you've created a culture out in the mountains, where you didn't have to worry about that before. Now that you do, these conversations are getting real weird because, again, you're making people uncomfortable, and discomfort is something that a lot of people shy away from.
Yeah. Yep, they do. Brian, dude, you're a pastor of color. And you're one of the most loving people that I know. You see people exactly as they are, and you love them for that. You dig deeper into who they are. But as a pastor right now, there's so much going on. I remember during Black Lives Matter in like 2016, where you had the pastors who were trying to figure out, do we talk about it on the pulpit? Do we not? Does it depend on the makeup of my congregation? Will I lose tithes if I bring this up? Does it really matter? Like, I mean, social justice isn't even a biblical thing. So like, to talk about it would just be us talk. This is not important. We need to be furthering the message. Like, we need to be furthering the gospel instead of talking about something as frivolous as race. Like, I don't know what kind of conversations you have with different pastors or what you're hearing from other church leaders in general and how you're processing it, even just based on the makeup of your church. Because churches are segregated. Like, churches are segregated. It's 2020 and churches are segregated. And we pride ourselves in our segregation because it's like, oh, it's a cultural experience, like you go to the white church, you go to the black church, you go to the Latino church, like it's a whole new world. And it's like, yes. So then does it make having these type of conversations easier for you to choose depending on what kind of congregation you're a member of or that you lead? So that's like, oh, I don't have to talk about it because we don't have, people of color in our congregation, or the majority of our congregation is white, so we don't really have to have that conversation. It's not really an issue we have here. Or like, how do you navigate this when it comes to like the genetic makeup of your church between races, cultures, ethnicities, ages, generations? Like, what do you do? Like, it sounds easy, and yet it sounds very heavy.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty heavy thing, because as many people as you have in your congregation, that's how many different opinions and different perspectives you have. Mm-hmm. So, when you speak, you don't speak just to emotionally vomit over people. You speak to be heard. And that's where change happens, when you're heard. And I think for me as a pastor, And I think for many other people as pastors, at least what I consider to be the good pastors, that's how they approach ministry. They speak to be heard. So, for example, you have to look at the genetic. You have to look at the DNA of your church. You have to look at the generational makeup of your church. You have to look at the racial makeup of your church. You have to look at the political makeup of your church. You have to exegete your community, your church, in order to find out how you can best speak to them so you can be heard and affect some kind of change. So, for example, my church is a predominantly white church. Here I am, a Hispanic guy. I'm my father's from Cuba. My mother, she's straight up American. She's straight up a white girl. And my head elder, he's black. He's Caribbean. And yet everybody in the congregation does not we don't look like everybody else in the congregation. We don't sound like everybody else in the congregation. So how do I speak to this kind of event? George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and some of these other issues that are racially hot topics that need to be talked about, right? Because as a faith leader, it's my God-appointed duty to do so. Because the gospel without speaking against injustice is not the gospel at all. It's only half the truth. And if it's half the truth, then it's not the truth at all. So, theology is good. Knowledge is good. In fact, I'm a nerd. I love theology. I love studying it. But if it does not drop 18 inches to the heart and out to the extremities in action, then the theology means nothing, no matter how good the theology is.
Wow.
So for me, I don't when I speak to the congregation, I do avoid certain terminology. I do avoid certain things, not because I feel like I'm being political, because I don't really care about that. Not because I'm trying to be PC, because really I don't care about being PC. Because I want to be heard. That's why. Because if I'm going to speak about something in a way with the terminology that people are already got their hair up about and already on edge about, then immediately, no matter how good it sounds, no matter how loving I put it, people are going to turn me off. Mm-hmm. I have no audience anymore. I've just narrowed my audience.
Right.
I can care less if they complain to the conference about me. I can care less who they complain about. Complain to about me. That's not my concern.
Right.
My concern is to be a prophetic voice in the church, speaking prophetically with boldness, but at the same time with wisdom.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, I think, for me, looking at the makeup of the church and using words, using terminology that I know, at least I hope I know people will hear, that's what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? So if I know that my church is mostly Republican, and I'm not speaking against Republican, I'm not speaking against Democrat, but I'm just speaking about if I know that my church is predominantly Republican, hashtag Black Lives Matter, they're going to turn me off. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. They're
going to turn me off. Do I believe in what Black Lives Matter stands for? Yeah. So let me find a different way to explain it, but nonetheless, explain it with boldness and with a prophetic voice.
Yeah. So,
in this situation with George Floyd, as pastors, as disciples, we need to speak up, and that's what I've decided to do. That's what I've talked to my head elder about. Him and I have had conversations. How do we do this? How do we do this with our congregation? Our congregation is a loving, friendly, wonderful congregation. Yet a lot of them are Republican. A lot of them are going to shy away from hashtag Black Lives Matter. How do we have a conversation and tell people about the injustices that are happening without being too politically charged? And you're walking a very fine line there. That's very difficult to do,
Yeah.
But it has to be done.
Right.
It has to be done. We may do it imperfectly, but it has to be done. And part of that is pastors, especially white pastors, even Hispanic pastors. I've experienced racism, but nowhere to the level of my black brothers and sisters. So I can't say that I can 100% empathize with them, because I can't. I've not lived it. The same way that I have not 100% empathized with a pregnant woman, I can't 100% empathize with a black person's life. I can't do it. Right? So what we need to do is to speak against this injustice that happened in a way where people can hear us. And so, I've reached out to some of my black pastor friends, Jonathan Smith. You know Jonathan
Yeah.
Smith, Pastor
Yeah,
Jonathan
Pastor
Smith.
Jonathan. Yeah.
I reached out to him. Him and I are scheduled to have a conversation tomorrow about how do I as a pastor, a white pastor,
Right.
who pastors a white congregation,
Right.
okay, how do I, well, I guess I'm Hispanic, white, whatever you want to call me, but how do I have this kind of conversation? What things can I do outside of social media posts and preaching? Outside of my words, what can I do as a pastor to affect this kind of change?
Right.
To help bring this to light that, hey, look, there's injustice happening.
Yeah.
Forget the political lines. It doesn't matter what George Floyd's background was before. It doesn't really matter what this guy Derek whatever background was before. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that a black man died. We watched a black man slowly die for 8 minutes at the knee by the knee of a white police officer. Something that is already politically charged.
Right.
So what am I going to do to speak to that? You know, this Sabbath, I was planning on preaching a different series on discipleship. I've had to change that.
Yeah.
I've had to change that. I'm speaking on the Sabbath, but I'm speaking on the Sabbath on how it relates to justice and freedom.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Speaking on Deuteronomy, I mean, it says, hey, look, I'm the God who brought you out of Egypt. And here you are, you know, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Not you, not your wife, not your kids, not your manservant, not your female servant, not your donkey, not anybody.
Yep.
Is to do anything, is to do anything and keep the Sabbath holy.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I need to protect the people that I can take advantage of.
Wow.
So it's a matter of social justice. It's a matter of providing freedom for the people that need the freedom. Whether I'm white, whether I'm black. And right now, the situation is that it's the white voice that needs to be speaking up, because you know what? The black voice needs to be speaking up louder than everybody. But let me tell you something. For those that don't want to hear the black voice, that's where us as the white voice are going to come in and to be able to help in that regard. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is to talk to people like the Candaces in the world, the people like the Kellens in the world, the people like the Pastor Jonathan Smiths of the world.
Yeah.
To talk to our black brothers and sisters to see how can we best understand them in their context. We can never fully empathize, but we can empathize in part. And we can take whatever little empathy whatever little experience that we have with, putting ourselves in your shoes, if that can even be possible. We can take that and bring it to the people that will actually hear us.
Yeah.
And affect that kind of change. And that's my responsibility as a minister, because that is the full gospel.
Yeah.
That is the full gospel. What is social justice without speaking up, without protesting against that? I mean, come on. I see all over social media sometimes, well, these protests, and it's horrible. The riots are horrible, but the the nonviolent protests, that's not horrible.
Right.
Esther in the Bible, she protested.
Yeah.
Shoot, you go to Genesis, and when Cain killed Abel, the ground protested. Okay? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground.
Wow.
Justice.
Wow.
Okay? Wow. And you can't deny Jesus. Jesus is overturning tables in the temple, man.
Yeah.
Justice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, speaking for justice and against injustice is our Christian DNA. And then we can take it even to church history. We are called Protestants.
Yeah.
Why are we called Protestants? Because we protested against the injustices of a certain religious system. Right?
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make sense for us not to protest. We have to say something. I love what Carlton Bird is doing with Breath of Life. He's going out and there's nonviolent protests happening there. I mean, just read some of Martin Luther King's stuff. I read his letter to clergymen from the prison in Birmingham. the other day.
Yeah.
And man, the guy is balanced. You want to read something balanced? You want to read something that is relevant from the 60s that's still relevant today? Read that. I would encourage all my white brothers and sisters to read that. I would encourage all my black brothers and sisters to read that.
Sure, I'm taking note right now.
Who was that? Oh, that's
yeah, I'm taking note. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so because, I mean, in there he talks about riots. He says, look, man, riots are the language of the unheard.
Yeah.
But he doesn't condone it. He doesn't condone it. He's just simply stating a fact. The riots are the language of the unheard, but he's not condoning it. He's saying this is people that have no other choice. Now, here's the other side of the coin. Yes, those people who are rioting, some of them are not for Black Lives Matter. Some of them are just plain up anarchists and just want a freebie on things. Okay, let's just face it. Let's be real about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are some who are rioting that are expressing their anger in bad ways, but nonetheless, they're expressing an anger that is legitimate.
Right.
The expression is wrong.
Right.
But the anger is legitimate. So there are some that are doing that.
Yeah.
So, of course, I'm going to advocate for a peaceful protest, right? I mean, like Martin Luther. But I'm going to understand that the anger in some of those people who are unjustly rioting, the anger is justified. The expression is not. But and these are the kind of conversations that we need to be having, rather than just plain out condemn the rioting, which I would condemn rioting for sure. Try to understand why. Try to dig deeper as to why that's the case.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm talking too much.
No, that's
Don't
all.
get me started, man.
I know, Brian.
Lovely sermon, I have to say.
When we release you just go. So no, I get it. Like it's a lot, and this is not a 1 day, 1 hour, couple hour conversation. It shouldn't. So I mean, just to kind of wrap this up. Actually, can you say something? Like, yeah, I want you to talk on your experience, because, like, your experience is so different. I mean, you grew up in an all-black community, and you went to an HBCU, and now you're in a predominantly white community. Completely opposite. So, how do you process this?
Being where I'm from, I didn't get to experience a lot of racism, because everywhere I turned there was someone who looked like me. Everywhere I turned, the people in power also looked like me. So I dealt with people who wanted to do favors for other people that they liked, but no one hated you because of something you couldn't control. They would hate you for petty reasons, and I can put up with petty reasons. That's nothing to be mad about. You know, we all love people differently. We all have favorites, so that's just something that exists in life that I can't be really mad at, because I do the same thing. I have my favorites. I would treat my friends and help them get something faster than a stranger. It's just something that we do. So I never experienced it growing up, because everyone was me. Everyone looked like me. As I moved after college to a place where I went from 98% of the population to less than 2% of the population, a complete reversal of my demographics. This is when I first realized that the world doesn't look like where I'm from, and the world doesn't really care about you at all. Like, I knew that, but since everywhere I went were my own people, it didn't feel like that. And as I got to where I am now, with the demographics changing, I experienced racism on a regular basis. I could go to the supermarket and get called the N-word multiple times. I could go to a restaurant and a waiter would not want to serve me or serve our table because, oh, there's a whole bunch of black people over there, and they'll specifically go and find the black waitress or waiter to come wait our table. I've gone to stores with friends, and I'm a pretty large guy. I'm 6'2", pretty big guy. I'm 400 pounds plus, and I'm a threat no matter what. Truthfully, any human being, any man, any woman either, of my stature is probably seen as a threat, but that's multiplied simply because of the color of my skin, to the point where they don't just send the regular people to watch you as you walk through the store. They go actually find the security guard to walk around behind you because they're scared themselves. So then they go find someone who probably can do something, and then realizing when the security guard sees how my size again, they're like, "Oh, that's the one you want me to follow." So they're on pins and needles following me around the store. The fear that I have every day that I drive, the things that I go through in my day-to-day life, is something that you try to explain to our white counterparts, and I love those who speak up for us, who speak up with us, but at the same time, it's hard to explain to them how every single day I wake up and I have to deal with an injustice. And as I said before, being of my stature, that's even magnified. George Floyd was not a small guy either. And I'm pretty sure that's also what contributed to what he probably experienced as well. If it was, not saying that you just have to be big to be treated wrong, but when you're seen as a threat and you're seen as this huge, huge thing, and I've been called a thing before plenty of times, walking around, people are scared of you. I've walked my neighborhood and people call their children back in from the street because I guess they think I'm going to swoop a child up as I'm going for my walk in the neighborhood. I've seen people rush in their houses from walks when they're running because I happen to pass through. I could go outside to cut my yard in my own neighborhood, and there are people who don't want to even be outside in my presence because I know I watched you be outside for the past 30 minutes. The second I step outside, you go in the house, and the second I step in the house, I watch you come right back out. And I see it happen multiple times, so I know it's not just a fluke. Like, it's a pattern. And this is in the neighborhood where I run a Christmas light show, and people come by my house all the time to look at my lights, where I have fruit trees, and I have others coming in to ask for fruit. And I was thinking, I'm in a great place. No one thinks that. But as I see more and more things unfold in today's world, we're scared as black people about what happens to us. But the narrative that's shown on TV is also scaring those who are not like us. Because now people who did not fear me, fear me. And nothing changed other than the fact that media decided to now portray what was supposed to be peaceful, what was supposed to be a call out for justice, as crime, as illegal, as calling us things that none of us really are. And then once you absorb that through the media and you don't have the wherewithal to separate those two things, we're basically just priming a pump on a bomb at this point, to the point where if something doesn't change, be it the way the media portrays everything that's going on right now, be it the government about how they respond to us, be it the those who do not want us to protest, if something doesn't change, we're going to keep priming this pump, and there will be, for lack of a better word, chaos. And none of us want to see that. I don't think any side wants to see that. And as I saw a random meme the other day where firefighters were putting out a fire, and you could see media and the government with a flamethrower, as if like we're trying to fix this problem. Like there are people out here trying to fix it, trying to solve it, and you're literally adding flames to the fire again with your statements, with your viewpoints, with the way you are pushing out this agenda against something that's so simple. There are people in your neighborhood, there are people around you who simply want to be treated the same way that you're treated. That's all. That's all the ask is. The same way that you believe that the same way that you walk down your street, the same way that you can get your groceries, the same way you can get a speeding ticket because you were speeding and you know you shouldn't have been, is the same way that Black Americans want to be treated. As simple as that.
Yeah.
And see, that's the stuff, that's the stuff that needs to be spoken out against. You know what I mean? My experience is not going to be the same experience as your experience. And, I think I realize that, and there's probably even more that I need to realize. I'm sure other people on this would agree with me. But, there are people out there, and I look at, whether it's my congregation or people affiliated with it in some kind of way, that don't get it, that just don't get, well, all we see is the riot, and that Target should have never been looted, and, and that's the focus. And yeah, you're right. It shouldn't have been, but really, all it's done is minimized the real issue here, and that is the racism, the injustice that's happening around us. And who's speaking out? I need to speak out so that way I bring awareness to the people that I are in my direct sphere of influence. The same thing with everybody else. It doesn't matter if you're a pastor or not. You're a disciple of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. So we can bring awareness, black, white, doesn't matter. Bring awareness to this issue because there are people like you that, man, they don't know what's going to happen when they go out and they start walking for a stroll in their neighborhood, listening to music. They ain't doing nothing. Mm-hmm. But yet they get labeled as, oh, we have a suspicious person walking around here. I know what that's like because as a Hispanic, they think, oh well, we got a spick walking around the neighborhood and he looks a little suspicious. Mm-hmm. No, we're going to be on the level that you may experience. But it's dehumanizing. And it needs to be spoken up against because you have a right to live in this country freely without having to worry about your safety the same way that everybody else does. So who's going to speak up? The black community is speaking up. And it's time for the white community to speak along with them. I like what you said there. Not speaking for them, but speaking with them. Mm-hmm. Together, arm in arm. Mm-hmm. If we don't do so, man, when Jesus comes again, what's my conversation with Jesus going to be like? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've seen on social media in the last couple of weeks that hit me the hardest was in 75 years and 50 years when your kids are studying about this in school, are you going to be proud when your kids come and ask you what you did? Are you going to be proud of what you can say or what you can't say? And so, I mean, with, again, acknowledging that this is a different beast for people like me, this feels different. I don't ever remember. I don't recall seeing in the past when it's been Trayvon Martin or the list of names that it's been throughout my life. I don't recall seeing people posting things like, here's a list of books that you should read by black authors. Here's a list of Netflix shows that speak about black culture and black experience. I don't recall seeing these type of posts in the past, and it feels like progress to me. But again, I think that there's a lot in the white community that are also looking for any excuse to either discredit what's happening, discount that it even matters. It's difficult to trust what we see on the news and what's being spoken about because, like you were saying, Brian, about what's happening, there's obviously a beautiful movement that's happening right now with Black Lives Matter. And there's always, with every beautiful movement, there's always a few that try and radicalize what's going on. Or very smart people on the other side of the argument that decide to try and use this as an opportunity to loot and to riot and to start chaos, to discount, knowing that if they pretend like they're with the other argument, they can discount what's being said. With everything that's been going on and what has been posted and the volume of my white friends that I've seen at least attempting to try and do the right thing, do you guys feel like this is different? Do you feel like this one is not as an excuse to say, oh, look at all the great we're doing, great, we stopped trying, but like, do you feel like this one is different? Do you feel like this is progress in any way, or do you feel like this is just like it's always been and it'll go back to the way it was in a couple weeks? And I guess what can we do to ensure that that doesn't happen?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. That one's tough. That one's really tough.
Like, was I just looking in the wrong place in the past, and like that stuff was being posted about and being said, and I just didn't see it in the past? Because that's plausible as well.
Honestly, now that you've said that, like, I don't remember that happening before. Like, no.
I don't remember that.
I mean, I remember there being, especially with Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman. Oh gosh, Zimmerman and with Philando Castile. Even with the cases that are not in cold blood, like even the young woman who was raped by the Stanford swimmer, and like the outrage with that situation because of how, his dad just sent a letter and was like, my son is just, he's such a great guy, like, I remember the outrage, but I don't remember the reaching across the table to say, like, I'm hurting, I'm bleeding, so in order to help you help me to not be in pain or to not bleed as much, I'm gonna give you what I know to like help you help me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that either, to be honest, Jonathan. I don't. So yeah, in that perspective, I see progress too. It's like, okay, we're willing to like share something, and maybe it's because we're all, again, we're also in quarantine, so it's not like we don't even have the excuse to say that we couldn't sit down and watch a documentary or sit down and read it,
or that we don't have time to call
new
people,
book, or call people, check up on them, text them, see what's going on, because we're not really hustling and bustling as much right now because of COVID. So it's, if we're gonna binge watch something, you might as well binge watch something that's gonna help us improve our nation, our communities, versus just like another round 16 with friends. Like, we don't have to do that. We've seen it a million times. We don't have to do that right now. Like, right now we should be at least minimum educating ourselves, even if we don't know what to say, or if we want to say everything. Like, we should be minimum educating ourselves in some capacity.
Yeah. I think too, just the blatant, that video, I forced myself, and when it first came out, I didn't watch it, but I sat down and I forced myself to watch it because I said, I need to experience this. I need to experience this for me, and I need to experience this for people who I need to experience for the injustice that it is. Yeah. And then I was outraged. But I think when we see that video is, it's blatant. There can be no controversy about that video. We can say in past incidences, people have brought up different points, different opposing viewpoints about it, but there's nobody saying that this was not a murder. There's nobody saying this was blatant, this was out there, and it's gotten the attention of America, whether Democrat or Republican, independent, it doesn't matter. It's gotten the attention. Some people have taken it and just whatever, because that's just part of their personality, whatever. But more people have been exposed to this and seeing, wow, there's injustice that's happening in this world. Wow, I can't believe that this is happening. So over the years, especially I would just use 2016. as a checkpoint, or maybe I would rather say 2000 and, not 2016. I would rather say 2010 as a checkpoint. From 2010 to 2020, this last decade. Yeah, I think, Jonathan, I think I've seen an uptick in people saying, "Wow, there actually is a problem. I need to speak out against this. I need to say something." And I see it even amongst pastor circles, because I'm in a forum that's in connection with over 2,000 pastors on Facebook, and man, that's all I'm seeing. Whereas before, I wasn't seeing all of that. Now, people, man, they are bold. White, black, doesn't matter. We got people from other countries, from Britain, from Ireland, from Asia. We got people, pastors from those parts of the world that are speaking up against this thing and saying, "Wow, there's an injustice. We need to say something." So, but yeah, Jonathan, I think that we're seeing this. I think we're seeing an uptick in more positive conversations towards this problems of whether it be systemic racism, the injustices towards blacks and minorities. We're starting to see that conversation happen more and more and more. And you know what? It's crossing party lines. It's not just a Democrat conversation. It's starting to become a Republican conversation as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing I noticed too. I mean, even not to get too political here, because I don't really care about politics too much, but I noticed Fox News even posted on this. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And gave admission to what was going on there. I don't remember if they admitted it was a racially motivated murder, but at the very least, they said this was an injustice, and they were willing to highlight that as part of their narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
That's progress.
That's huge progress. And I think a really scary part of this conversation, at least in the years past where I've been aware of it now, is it has felt such of a political argument as well, and where it seems like, if you're looking for equality and you're looking for justice and justice against police brutality and that sort of thing, then that's more of a Democratic point of view, and the Republican Party has been kind of cast as the opposition to that. And so I think that's however you feel politically and wherever you lean, that's been a detriment to the conversation, because then that inherently makes it okay. So if I do want to jump in on the support of justice and equality and that sort of thing, if I'm a Republican, that feels like conceding anything to the Democratic Party is taking something that I have and now giving it to the opposition, of which I don't agree with ever. And it feels like it's taking something personally from me to give it like that. And the word privilege, and as it's associated with white privilege, has always there's no reason to not be 1,000% honest in a conversation with Candace and all of you guys as well. Kenny and I have talked about really hard things before in the past, and so if I can be honest, then hopefully there are white people that listen to this later as it comes out as a podcast that can relate. Like the term white privilege has always been such a bristling thing for me. That's not something that me, and I believe any other white person, enjoys hearing about. It's human nature to not want to be told your life was easier than mine. And in the same way that when we were toddlers, my sister and I would fight, and I would have a bad day at school and she would try and one-up me, or she did this great thing and I would try and one-up her, because we want to have a hierarchy amongst ourselves of I've either done the most or I've achieved the most or I've been through the most to come out the other. It's again, like I said, along the party lines thing, it's felt like an us versus them thing, where I don't want you coming into my life and telling me my life was easy, when over the years of this conversation happening more and more, and people like Candace shining lights of things into my life that I didn't think about before, I think every stupid thing that's ever been said has either been said from a hateful perspective or from an ignorant perspective, and if we can root out the places of ignorance inside us, then we can make a lot of progress. And the shift in my thinking, and I hope anybody who listens that feels the same way, is that telling someone that they have white privilege, or accepting the fact that I do have privileges as a white man that others don't, doesn't mean that my life has been easy. It doesn't take away from struggles and trauma and things that I've gone through in my life. It just means that the color of my skin and the perception, the assumptions that people make about me when they see me, just means that the color of my skin isn't an additional trauma and an additional struggle that I have to work with. It doesn't make my life easy. It just means that that isn't something on my plate that I've had to deal with, whereas it is in others' situations. So as we move forward, almost seems like the wrong term, because it doesn't feel like this is something that we should move past quickly. But as we continue on into the future, what are things, for those that are listening in the future, what are things that you would like to continue to hear, or you would like to see happen, or you would like to continue having conversations about, so that we don't backslide into the way things have usually gone, where sports are about to start back up this summer, which I'm super jazzed about, but there are going to be distractions that come back into our lives as this quarantine ends, where this story, for those that are actively looking for ways to not think about it anymore, will be able to hold on to. So like, what are things that we all can do to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah. Well, I think that's those are really good questions, and I'm glad you said that, Jonathan. To wrap this up. No, I'm dead serious. And I might get slack for this from black people, but I don't really care at this point. Black people are not the only people with problems. Humans have problems because we live in a sin-stricken world. There are injustices from different levels, from different angles, and the only way that this can even start to resolve is that we have to admit to ourselves as black people that we cannot say that just because we feel and truly are more suppressed doesn't mean that the problems and issues that happen in other communities, especially in white communities, don't ever count. It's like other people are not allowed to suffer because my suffering is worse. We suffer because people have horrible hearts, period. Your skin tone doesn't make you more, more or less prone to not being or being evil.
Yeah.
Just who you are as a person, your character. That's it. It's a character flaw in humanity. And the fact that we would even try to one-up each other in our injustices or in our struggles is not going to help us go anywhere. The whole purpose is not just for white people to come into the lives of black people and only understand us. Because if we just want to receive your understanding and block ourselves from being able to do the same, it's not going to matter. We have to humble ourselves as black people and say, if we expect them to see in themselves why what they do to hurt us not only sucks but is petrifying, we then have to reach across the table and understand white culture. What is being taught in your homes? How can I help you as a black person change that narrative in your life? How can I help you empower your communities? I'm not waiting to sit here and go, why don't you cater to my suffering? And that's it. Or I'm not moving until you move. I'm not doing anything until you do something. We as black people can go and talk to white people. We don't have to wait. We don't have to. We want to. It would feel really nice. But something that I'm learning in quarantine and God's really working on me about is that if I want something bad enough, it doesn't really matter who started the fight. We're called to forgive. Period. There's no forgive and see section A for the type of forgiveness here, see section B for this type. It's just forgive. Were you wrong? Forgive. Were they wrong? Forgive. It doesn't actually matter. The purpose is, am I willing to put my anger and put my outrage out there for you not only to see, but then to actually hold a conversation and say, I know my hurt prevents me from wanting to see the other side. I'd rather not. I'd rather just stay away from you. That's what I'm taught. I'm taught to stay away from you. I'm taught to not talk to you. I'm taught these things. But I'm choosing to step out of what I'm taught. Black communities are taught this all the time, just as much as white communities are taught, to stay away from each other. And in not realizing that we're creating a greater separation and therefore perpetuating the problem because we're seeing each other from a distance. And we're going based off of a far off perspective to where when we actually come close, we realize, shoot, we missed it. We thought a lot of things that really actually weren't happening. We're just not taking that time to do that, and we're not wanting to. All sides, every side, all the sides. The only way this is going to work if everyone takes a chill pill, gets over themselves for a second, and reaches across the table. And this should be something that Christians should know to do. I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm frustrated from multiple levels. But my mom did not teach me to sit in my anger. She taught me to bring love into those arenas that make you mad. So then they can't help but put down their walls to actually know you. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised what blossoms out of that. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for it to come to you. You can go to it. And I think this is, Kellen, I think this is also why people look at you and me and Kevin and go, how on God's green earth do you guys have friends from all over the world, from different backgrounds, different denominations, different religions, different sexualities, different social classes, and they all talk to you and treat you the same? Because mom taught us to go into those uncomfortable spaces and see people the way God sees people.
Yeah.
That's it. It was the most simple lesson, and yet in my adult life, I'm seeing how if mom didn't do that, I don't know what perspective we would be having right now. But I'm grateful for the perspective that she instilled in us as infants. That the visuals, I don't want to be colorblind. That's not some. I don't like the term using, I'm colorblind. I don't see colors. Why? You should see the colors. They're beautiful. All the colors are amazing. Appreciate the color. I'm color appreciative. That's what I tell people. I'm color appreciative. I'm culture appreciative. Because I learn so much about how same we are. We are so similar that it's a shame that something as minute as pigmentation would have so much power in keeping us from realizing what connects us. This is just mind-blowing to me. So I'm glad that you had the courage to say that, because I'm sure people are going to hear that and be like, I can't believe this white boy just said that. I can't believe he would, at this time, mention that he has problems. I mean, but it's true. That's the thing. we all have problems. And just because I'm hurting a lot, and just because I'm going through a lot right now, one doesn't mean that you're not going through your personal problems. It also doesn't mean that your personal problems are preventing you from seeing what's going on and being able to reach out and still help other people in problems that you can't even process within yourself because it's not your narrative. Like, it's just another problem. It's a big problem. It's a serious problem. It's a problem that needs to be addressed. But I personally, as a black female with friends from every walk of life, I don't want people to feel like their personal problems are just null and void because of the racial prejudice and discrimination within America. You're actually allowed to speak on your own problems, but you also have to be aware of there's time and place, there's safe spaces. You have to assess your safe spaces if you have them or if you don't, the makeup of those spaces, and but not feeling guilty that you still have personal problems. I mean, I think this has highlighted a lot of problems because we're not talking. White people are left to ask how they're allowed to talk. Like, that should be a sign to all of us that we're so separated that, like, if I could read every text I get in a day of how do I talk to people? How do I mention anything? What do I do? Is this okay? Can you proofread this? Can you edit my post? Like, I'm over here proofreading the post of my white friends who just want to be supportive because they're afraid of which way, and then they're like,
wants to hear my opinion.
They don't want to hear my opinion. Yeah. And then, like, if at this point, like, you really, truly are going through something, especially, I mean, like, right now, I mean, it's still COVID. So there's people who are dealing with unemployment. There's people who are dealing with, I can't feed my family the way I was before. I'm not able to pay my bills the way I was before. There's people still going through a lot of other things. There's people who are dealing with their family members who are dying in the hospital. Like, there's still other things happening outside of this. Yeah. And to, like, also tell people, like, I can't believe you're bringing up your dying auntie when people like me are being shot. My dying auntie is very important to me. You know, like, I don't want her to die. It doesn't make sense.
I think there's a really important distinction there in that, you know, first of all, I think it's a super flimsy excuse to say, I don't think anyone wants to hear my opinion because I'm white. I think that's a real big cop-out because, like, my Nationals won the World Series last year. I posted about it for months afterwards. Like, no one cares about my opinion on baseball, but, like, I was very vocal about it regardless of that because I was hella passionate about it. And so I think, like, my fear of, like, oh, well, I'm white, so no one really wants to hear my thoughts on this is a flimsy cop-out as to saying that doesn't mean that there aren't things that should be said right now. It just means that I'm uncomfortable with trying to figure out how to say them the right way. And, you know, you and I have a relationship, Candace, that, like, I think that the important distinction is that there are personal problems and there are societal problems, and that me making the point of, like, white privilege feels like an attack on personal problems, which I don't think it is, because, like, we have a relationship where, like, I can unload a whole day's worth of frustrations and my day was horrible, so I'm going to call you and tell you all about it. Yeah. And you can do the same thing to me, where there does have to be a prioritization where there, you know, if all of us collectively are on a life raft, and obviously we're all dealing with the same struggles of there's the sun and there's the lack of food and we're thirsty and we're stuck out in the middle of the ocean and this is all awful for all of us equally. But if there is one of us that is actively being pushed off the raft, if we're all collectively attempting to push one off the raft, then their specific societal issue should take priority and precedence right now, which is, I think, what we're experiencing right now. And again, not to make the argument that this is like, this just happened and it's a new thing and we need to address it. It's always been happening. We're just more aware of it now. So I'm not raising the point to say we should all talk about our like all of our suffering is equal. I think there's personal suffering, and that's to the point where like my parents raised us to always say, and I've carried with me always now 27 years of, it's always better to assume that the person that you're interacting with has had a worse day than you. If you just go into every interaction like that, you'll go into it with empathy and you'll go into it with understanding, and you'll avoid saying potentially ignorant and stupid things.
Right.
But that's all on like a personal level, and with the personal one-on-one conversations, if those are just happening, period, then we avoid all of these issues, or most of these issues that we've been talking about.
Right.
But societally, there is a precedent, like there's a priority right now in this one issue of justice and police brutality and racial profiling in the law and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think, and it's understandable, right? And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. I mean, you look at, I think of Luke 15. You look at Luke 15. This is the how Jesus, he left the 99 to go save the one, right? Does it mean that the 99's lives were not as important as the one? No, it just means that the one was in more detriment than the 99. So therefore, Jesus had to go to the one. So his life is just as important as the rest of the 99. All 100 are just as important to Jesus Christ. But that one needs help the most right now.
I love that.
Therefore, he goes to him. So this is the same case. I mean, Jesus gives a perfect example with that parable here, when on the grander scope of salvation. But let's narrow it down to the more microscopic, more earthly level. Well, here you have a community of people that are black and that are being ostracized the most.
Right.
So where does the focus need to be? Again, it doesn't mean that my problems are irrelevant. It doesn't mean that Josh's problems are irrelevant. It doesn't mean that Jonathan or Kellen's or anybody's problems are irrelevant. They are all important. But who needs the help the most? Who needs the voice directed and prioritized in their direction the most?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the key here.
Yeah, right now it's not about anything else. It's not about all lives. It's not about whatever.
We get it.
There's been so much good stuff that I've seen posted recently of like, there's a whole neighborhood full of houses, and the fire department shows up and every house is screaming that all houses matter, but there's only one that's currently on fire, which is why the fire department is here. Like there's so many good analogies that people are always going to find themselves, like people that don't want to think about this or don't want to be a part of the conversation are always going to find ways to not be a part of the conversation. Are there like forceful ways to get them a part of the conversation? Or like what you were saying earlier, Brian, there are things such as the term white privilege, such as the term Black Lives Matter, such as all of those things that will immediately turn off a demographic of people and they'll stop listening. What do you guys think are ways to re-engage or to kind of like skirt around those turn-off vocabulary words for some people that either refuse to acknowledge that there's an issue right now or refuse to acknowledge that it's all of our problems?
Like it's hard to see it. And
sorry, is it okay?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just like, I can't remember. Did we? I don't know. Did we have a sermon on this at BCC, or was it somewhere else? I can't even remember. But we were talking about the issue of like David, and how he had done like all of that, like how he he went and he outright. Oh, I guess it was from that one series that we're studying, but like talking about the David and Bathsheba issue where he kills her husband and then takes her and does all this like cover up stuff, and he's just like playing it cool until was it Nathan the prophet? I think it's Nathan. I can't remember the names. Who just shows up on the scene and like tells a story, and he doesn't even realize that he's talking about him. But once he says, "Yeah, that's you," he's like, "Oh wow, I need to like stop." You know, like I think that story tells a really poignant message about like, well, I mean, in that case, they were talking about the power of story, and in that case, I think it did a really brilliant job of trying to dig out a problem without like, but doing it in such a way that nobody's feelings could be hurt until the message was actually finished.
Right.
And like that's like one example of a great model. That's like one model out of the Bible. There's many, you know, but that's like one model. I think that would probably be like really helpful in that tricky situation. But I also just like, yeah, I really do hate the fact that everything we say is really, really politically charged just by default, and like every little thing is pins and needles. And
Yeah.
I don't like dancing around words. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I, not to like, not feel for you, Pastor Brian, but I think I would really struggle to be a pastor right now. I feel like that'd be really exhausting. And I'm so glad you enjoy your job, presumably. But I feel like I would really struggle. I would really struggle with that.
You know, I think in this question, I think that we, you know, the word that comes to my mind is the word incarnational. Okay, I think about Jesus, and I'm not trying to over spiritualize this, man. I mean, I'm just thinking about. I'm not thinking about party lines. I'm not thinking about Democrat voice. I'm not thinking about Republican voice. I'm not thinking about independent voice. I'm thinking about, man, we're not a donkey. We're not an elephant. We're not blue. We're not red. You know, it's all about the kingdom of God. That's what he came here to do. He came to tell us what the kingdom was about. And I think about incarnation, being incarnational, and again, that goes back to, look, we know what are buzzwords, what are like hot button words for, you know, these hot potato words for certain communities. We know what they are. At least if we don't know what they are, then we need to try to figure out what they are in the communities in which we serve. Whether it's in your church, whether it's in the school, whether it's in whatever it is, we got to figure out what those words are. And it's not that you're avoiding the words because of pins and needles. No. It's being incarnational and being loving and saying and keeping people's ears open to what you have to say. If you're going to speak on justice, you got to speak prophetically and boldly. But you don't have to say words that you know that are going to unnecessarily turn people's ears off. At the end, you may turn people's ears off, but you know that you've done everything in your power to not.
Yeah.
You know that you've done everything that you could prayerfully, thoughtfully, critically, skeptically, whatever it is. You've done everything that you could to navigate those tricky waters. And let me tell you something, that navigation process, that critical thinking, that is an act of love for the oppressed community and an act of love for the people that need to hear about this. Love is hard work. And those kind of conversations, I can't just go into the congregation, or I just can't go into a certain community and go blah all over them. I can't do that, because what I've done is I've done a disservice to the people who are oppressed, and I've done a disservice to the people who need to hear the oppression. I've done a disservice on both ends, and here I am. I'm alone on an island, isolated, speaking to myself, just venting. And so this is where cool heads need to prevail. And I believe that there's a leader in all of us. I believe that God has given us this unmitigated potential to lead in each one of us tier, to lead the people that are in our sphere of influence. And so it is our God-appointed duty to know the community in which we speak to exegete that community, and to be able to go through the hard and tricky waters of navigating the word usage and the structure of how we're going to say something, so that way the point can get across, and we can speak with prophetic authority, right? We can speak with we can speak as Jesus wants us to speak, and people can hear as He wants them to hear. You know, so I think that's part of it, man. I really do, and there's a lot that I'm still learning. In fact, I'm going to have a conversation with a pastor friend of ours from that's pastoring out in Arizona, Pastor Jonathan Smith, and I'm going to see what other pointers I can get on how to navigate through this kind of thing. How can I, as a Hispanic white pastor, reach out to my white church and bring this issue to light in an effective and impactful way that will make some kind of tangible difference? You know?
I think that speaks volumes to like you and the person and the character that you are, and you've built that trust with Pastor Jonathan, and that you wouldn't be able to bring those questions to him and be. I mean, you could, but that level of interaction and dialogue between you that can be that beneficial comes from you've put in the time to be friends and to invest in each other and to be open to hearing things that are outside of your perspective. So I think that speaks a lot to the relationship that you two have created together as well.
And I think that's I just think that's a burden for all of us to have, right? To seek out those perspectives.
And luckily, that's a tangible thing that we can do, because we can't sign a presidential order, we can't put legislation actually into effect. We can call, but that was frustrating, especially the first day when all of this was happening, and that's part of the reason. It's frustrating, especially at first, because it's like, okay, well, like what? There's nothing I can actually do. Like I wasn't anywhere near this that happened, and I haven't been anywhere near any one of these police brutality cases that's happened. But like, so what? That was difficult at first to be like, what can I actually tangibly do? And I think that you just said it perfectly, of like, look yourself in the mirror every single day and ask, what can I do today? Seek out conversations that make me uncomfortable. Seek out things that are outside of my perspective. Ask questions, because I love Candace. I love what you said, and I'm sorry I'm talking too much too. I loved what you said earlier about us not being the same. We're not the same. Like it's the men and women aren't perfect. We're not completely identical. We are in worth. We are in value. We are in competency. But there are differences in the genders, and I think there are differences in cultures and upbringings and things like that too. Like like you've introduced me to a ton of things in my life that I would not have had without you, without your perspective, without your culture, without your background, without your influence being a woman of color in my life, things I wouldn't have. From like the most meaningful things that have helped build my character to like what was at your graduation, what was the drink that was there?
Sorrow.
Oh my freaking goodness. Yes, I've wanted that in my life every single day since I drove away from Kentucky. Like, what was it called?
Sorrel. SORREL.
Right?
Yeah.
I want an IV of that into both arms.
It's the best.
All day, every day. Like there's so much there's beauty in it's such a cliche thing to say, but it's nothing that we think about every single day. And there's so much beauty in the differences of like of where we come from and the way we were raised and the cultures that we have, and trying to shoot for a space of I don't see color and I don't want to talk about this, because if I just declare that we're all the same, then I don't have to have any uncomfortable conversations, and I don't have to ask about, there's a massive list of things that Candace, like we talked about over the course of our friendship, that like I do this way, I know you do that way. Please tell me why. Mm-hmm. And that's like something tangible that we can actually do every day to feel like we're at least in a little bit in control of what's going on in the world, and feels like we can at least contribute a little way.
Yeah. Guys,
Sorry,
do you wanna? I was gonna wrap us up, but if you wanna say something real quick.
The last thing I just wanted to say, I feel like we all, I feel like we've all come to I feel like our conclusion is basically, let's just do it. Let's wake up every morning. Let's ask, what can I do today to navigate a the labyrinth of the human hearts around me. Because I don't know what else to do. I feel like that's the best thing we can do.
Yeah. It all starts with...
And to pray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the labyrinth of human hearts around me is one of the most beautiful things I've heard today, and that has to be a song of some kind somewhere.
Yes.
Write it down, man. Hashtag.
Right.
Okay.
We'll
Yes.
give you proceeds of...
Yeah, Jonathan, write that lyric down, and then we'll give Kellen credit for that beautiful lyric. Like, right there. Yeah. Go ahead.
To add something to it, something that I think is very, very important, a message that I think I know that everybody can resonate with, is simply the word love, because every race, every ethnicity, every person, every being on this earth knows the definition, the meaning, the feeling of the word love. And I say that because if we just simply feel that love and express that love to every individual, and we share that love with every individual, the problems that we have right now would not exist. Because you couldn't say you love me and also love your white brother or if you don't see the problem that we're facing right now. And as cliche as it sounds, if you to walk in someone else's shoe, I want you to put someone that you love in that shoe of George Floyd, of anyone else whose life has been taken. Don't put yourself in it, because we have a problem for some reason walking in other people's shoes. So just pick someone that you love and put them in those shoes and think, would you be okay with what just happened to your loved one? Because again, we all know what love is, and we all have loved ones, and unless you want that to happen to your loved one, you should be able to see that's a problem. So even if you don't put yourself in those shoes, put someone else in those shoes and see that there is a problem, and as far as the speaking out, I was telling someone the other day, I said, it doesn't matter if you think that you won't be heard or that you have a problem, or that if you say something right now that the black community will ostracize you or anything of that nature. Because in the moment right now, we are hurting as a black community, and we might lash back out at you because you say something right now as our white counterparts. But I guarantee you that 3 months from now, 6 months, a year from, it might even be 5 years from now, we will go back and see who it was that stood by us. And we might have lashed out then, but we will be thankful for you. So even if you get met with that clap back, for, as the young people will say, keep doing what you're doing, because you are appreciated. Even if that appreciation doesn't come into the future, you're on the right side of things. We appreciate you. We love you. And we thank you.
Wow. Jonathan, Brian, Jacob, Kellen, Josh, thank you. Thank you for being men, being willing to talk about this with me. There's a lot that we can think about, and I'm going to do a part 2 of this and have some more female voices in the part 2, and it's literally just going to be a uncut, unedited conversation, because I think people need to hear how people are honestly having these conversations, how people are stepping into spaces to sit. Literally, we're just sitting down to talk about this. And I think the example here, once heard, might help other people either have the confidence or have an idea on how to get into these conversations. And so I greatly appreciate you guys for being very impromptu about this with me, while we're all still kind of heightened in our emotions about it and our thought process on this. I think everyone had really great advice to give, and I don't think any of it's really wrong, because we're literally just we're in the talking process. We're in the getting to know you process. And eventually this can turn into a courtship across races, and saying, like, I desire to truly make us family. Like, I've gotten to know you enough to say, okay, like, I want to be intentional about how I see you and how I hear you and how I sit with you and how I stand with you, how I kneel with you, how I pray with you. I desire that courtship to be intentional, so that way we reach this marriage of society where we can go anywhere at any time and simply love each other because we took the time to do so. I don't have anything else to say. At least not right now. I'm tired. But I'm hopeful. This is one of many conversations I'm sure people are having or thinking of having. And I just hope more are birthed out of it in the future. And it all starts with us individually. Like everyone said, it's a heart problem. And it starts with us on the ground level. We can't wait for our president to do anything about it. We can't wait for our government officials to do anything about it. We can't wait for the House. We can't wait for the Senate. We can't wait for the governors, the mayors. It's us. We're the ones who see it. We're the ones who sit in it. We're the ones who have to seek it out every day. Every day. If we're not uncomfortable even a little bit, especially right now, we missed something today. We missed out on an opportunity today. We should all be a little uncomfortable right now. Sit in that discomfort. Not necessarily to figure out how to be comfortable, but just to let that discomfort marinate, knowing that in doing so, we'll get to a space where love can truly abound. I think that's all we have. So, whoever decided to sit through this long episode, thank you. Thank you if you chose to sit and listen to every perspective on every spectrum of the rainbow. That's a beautiful start. That's a great start, to be willing to just listen. If you can sit through an uncomfortable conversation on a podcast for a couple hours of your day, just to try to understand, I promise you, you had a great day. And it's only going to get better. So, until next time, thanks, guys.